Hi, my name is Mikhail Dunn. I'm an 18-year-old software developer at CodeChangers, and over the past few years, I've created all sorts of cool stuff, from apps to websites to VR worlds, and even games like the one you're going to make today. You're going to be making a game called Blobbert. It's a platformer kind of like Mario, but you have to write the code that makes the game playable. Alright guys, let's get started by going to learn.codechangers.com and signing in with the accounts that your teacher gives you. Once we make it to the home page here, you'll be able to see the Blobbert icon in the left sidebar. We'll go ahead and click on that, and that will take us straight into the tutorial. One of the first things you'll notice about Blobbert is the giant white space to the left of the game. This is called the Blobbert Code Editor, and this is where we're able to write code and actually have it run in the game. Now, to the right of that is where the actual game is. But if we were to go in there now and try to do anything, nothing happens. This is because we haven't written any code in the editor yet to teach Blobbert how to do anything. So basically right now, Blobbert doesn't know how to play the game. He's just kind of sitting there. So we have to write code as instructions in order for Blobbert to know how to move on with the game. So one of the first things that we're going to want to do is make it so that Blobbert can move, right? We're going to do this by using something called a function. And a function is basically just a list of steps that we can associate together and then use later on. So it's kind of like when your parents tell you to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. They don't have to tell you all of the steps every time, like get a slice of bread, get the peanut butter, spread the peanut butter on the bread, get another slice of bread, get some jelly, spread the jelly on the bread, then put the two slices of bread together, put it on a plate, and cut it in half, right? They can just tell you to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you already know all the steps that go with that, because in your brain, you know that function of making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So that's kind of the concept behind it and what a function is. But how do we actually take that concept and turn it into real code that runs in the game? Well, we're going to do that by using a programming language called JavaScript, which is what Blobbert runs off of. Now, JavaScript is really popular in a lot of online or web-based games because it's a programming language that can run right inside of a web browser. So in JavaScript, we're going to use something called arrow syntax to write a function. And the way that arrow syntax works is we're going to start off by saying the name of the function, which in this case is going to be move. So we'll just say mov. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and put a space, and we need to tell it what move is. So we're going to say move is equal to, and then we'll put another space, and now we're going to put two more symbols, which are parentheses, right after that. So we need a left parenthesis and a right parenthesis. Now these parentheses together in an arrow syntax just mean like the options or the parameters for the function. So for example, if we were writing a sandwich function, an option might be what type of sandwich you want, whether it's turkey or ham, and then later down the line we can just say we want to make this type of sandwich, so we're going to put this ingredient in. So after our parentheses, we'll put another space, and then we need to put an actual arrow symbol. And we can write an arrow symbol by putting an equal sign and then a greater sign right next to each other. After we do that, we'll put another space, and then we're going to put two curly braces. These two curly braces are going to wrap around all of the list of steps that we have inside of our function. And then, last but not least, at the end of the line, we need to put a semicolon. In JavaScript, we have to have a way to tell the code when we're done with a sentence, right? So kind of like how in English we have a period at the end of the sentence, well in JavaScript we just use a semicolon. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to click in between the two curly braces, and we're going to do a list of steps that'll help us keep the code organized. So we're going to press enter or return twice. So we'll say enter, enter. Then we're going to press the up arrow key to go back up to line 2. And then we're going to press the tab key to tab over, so that way we can keep our code organized. So now that we're in between these two curly braces, we're going to write out the list of steps that we need to tell Blobbert in order to make him move. Now, the first thing that we need to figure out is whether or not we actually want Blobbert to move in the first place. And if I was playing the game and I wanted Blobbert to move, I would try pressing an arrow key or a WASD key to see if it moved him around. So in our code, we need to check and see if the player is pressing any of those keys. And we can do that using something called an if statement. Now, an if statement is as simple as it sounds. We're checking if something is true. And if it is true, then we're going to go ahead and run some code after that. So in order to write an if statement in JavaScript, we just have to say if, and then put a space, and then we need another left and right parenthesis, and then we'll click in between those two parentheses, and inside here, we're going to write check key. Now, the K in key is capitalized, and this is because in JavaScript we use something called camel casing. And camel casing just means that the first word in a phrase needs to be lowercase, but every word after that gets capitalized, or at least the first letter does. So if we were to say something like, my name is Mikyler, then we get it so that the N, the I, and the M are all capitalized. Now, it's called camel case because if you kind of look at the capital letters as bumps, they kind of look like the humps on a camel. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that and click back in here after check key. Now, check key is a function, which is just a list of steps, that goes in and checks to see if any key is being pressed on the keyboard. And it takes in an option, which is what key are we checking for. So we're going to put another set of parentheses here, another left and right, and then we'll go in between those parentheses, and inside here in all caps, we need to tell it what key. And the key that we want to check for first is keycode underscore right. And this is going to be all capitalized. So check key, keycode right, is going to tell us whether or not they're pressing the right arrow key. Then we need to go all the way to the end of the line, and we're going to put a space, and then we're going to put some more curly braces, another left and right. Then we'll go in between those curly braces and do our steps to keep our code organized again. So we'll hit enter, enter, up arrow key, tab key. And that'll take us in between the two curly braces on the if statement. Now these curly braces, kind of like the curly braces for the arrow function, basically just mean the list of steps that we run if the if statement is true. Okay? So inside of here, we know that the player is pressing the right arrow key on their keyboard. So we know that they want Blobbert to move. But how do we actually move Blobbert in the game? Well, the first thing we need to do is actually get access to Blobbert so that we can change his position. And we're going to access Blobbert in our code by saying hero. Now, after hero, we need to put a dot, and then we're going to put the name of the property or attribute we want to change about Blobbert, which is probably going to be his speed, so that way when he's moving, he has a certain amount of speed. So we'll say hero dot, and then we need to say x speed. And again, we have a capital S because x and speed are two different words, so we're going to camel case it and say x speed. Now, on a coordinate plane or a grid, we usually have an x-axis, which is side to side, and then a y-axis, which is up and down. So since we want to move Blobbert to the side when we're pressing the right arrow key, we're going to change the x speed instead of the y speed. So after we say hero.xspeed, we need to say space equals space, and then we need to say what we want to set the speed to. And we could put in any number we wanted here. We could put a 1, we could put a 5, we could put 1,000, and Blobbert would move at that speed across the x-axis. But one thing that we usually like to think about when we're making games is how are the players going to use our game, right? So when somebody's using your game on, let's say, a giant TV, there's probably going to be more pixels on that TV than there would on a tiny little smartphone, right? Because the screen's just bigger. So if we wanted Blobbert to move at the same speed, no matter how many pixels there were, we would use something called a unit in our code. And a unit basically just represents one block on the screen. So if you look over here, we have these ice blocks here, and the width or the size of one of those blocks is equal to 1 unit. So if we say hero x speed equals a unit, that's going to move Blobbert 1 block every frame. Now that's going to be really fast. If we were to go in here and click the right arrow key, he just flies all the way to the right of the screen. So what we maybe want to do is after unit, we want to make it a little bit smaller. So we'll say space / to say divided by, and then space, and then 12. And then since this is the end of our line in JavaScript, we need to put another semicolon. So this is going to say we want him to move 1/12 of a unit every time. So after 12 frames, he will have moved 1 whole block. So now if I click restart and then click back into the game, and I click the right arrow key, Blobbert moves to the right. So that's pretty cool. We were able to just go in, and in 5 lines of code, we were able to make it so that Blobbert can move to the right. But if you click in there and you fall down, we can't get to the flag unless we can also move left. We can move left by clicking down here on line 4 after this curly brace, and we're going to put a space and put something called an else if statement. Now, an else if statement is like an if statement, but it only runs if the first thing wasn't true. So this second one, we want to check if they're pressing the left arrow key, but it's only going to happen if they weren't pressing the right arrow key. So we'll say else, and then put a space and say if. Then we'll put another space, and we need more parentheses, just like we have on line 2. And inside those parentheses, we're going to say check key with a capital K, and then another set of parentheses. And inside those parentheses, in all caps, we're going to say keycode _ left. Then we'll go all the way to the end of the line, put a space, and then put another set of curly braces. Then we can go in between those curly braces and say enter, enter, and then up, tab, and that'll put us inside of the else if steps. And inside here, we are going to say a similar thing because we still want him to move side to side, but we just want him to go the other way. So we're going to say hero.xSpeed, then we'll say space equals space, and then if we said unit divided by 12, it would do the exact same thing. He would move to the right when we press the left arrow key. So what we have to do to get him to move to the left is instead of going at a speed of unit divided by 12, we want to go negative unit divided by 12. So that way he moves in negative direction, which is back to the left. So we'll go ahead and after the equals, we'll put a dash symbol and then unit space divided by space 12 and then a semicolon. So now if we click back into the game and we press the left arrow key, Blobbert moves to the left, which is great. But if you notice, when we are moving to the left, Blobbert's not looking where he's going. He's just kind of walking backwards and falling over every once in a while. So we actually need to tell Blobbert which direction to look when he's moving. We can actually do this super easy by clicking back into the code at the end of line 5 after where we just wrote our code. And we're going to hit enter and then tab so that way we go to the next line. And on this line, we're going to say hero.look. And look is just a function that tells Blobbert a direction to look in. So after that, we need to put some parentheses here and then go in between those parentheses and put 2 single quotes. Then we want to go in between the 2 single quotes and we're going to type in all lowercase a direction to have him look in. Since we're inside of the left key, we're going to tell him to look left. And then at the end of the line, we just need our semicolon to say that that's the end of our line. So now if we click back into the game, we'll click to the left, and now he actually looks to the left. But there's another issue here. If we click the right arrow key, now he's not looking to the right. And that's just because in our top function where we wrote the move to the right code, we didn't tell him to look right. So once he looks left, he doesn't know how to look back to the right. We can fix that by clicking up on line 3 at the end after our code, hitting Enter Tab to go to a new line, and then we're just going to say hero.look, and then we need more parentheses here, and then we can go in between those parentheses and we can put some single quotes. Then in between the single quotes, we'll just say right, because when we're moving to the right, we want him to look right. And then we'll click all the way to the end of the line and put a semicolon. And now back in the game, when we press left, he goes left, and when we press right, he goes right, which is really good. The only thing that I think we could do better about this is in newer video games, when characters are moving, it kind of looks like they're moving because it has something called an animation. And an animation is basically just this series of images that get played in sequence, and they're just slight variations between the images, so it makes it look like the character is moving. So we actually have animations that we can tell Blobbert to use when he's moving. And the one that we want him to use is his running animation, which just makes him look like he's running around. So we can do that by clicking on line 4 after our code where we said to look right. We'll hit Enter Tab, and in order to get him to use the run function, we just have to say hero.play run. And play run's camel case because there's 2 words. After that, we just need some parentheses and a semicolon. Now if we click back into the game and we move him to the right, he starts running around, which is great. Now if we let go of the arrow keys, he's just sitting there running in place because we told him to run, but we never told him to stop running. So what we have to do is click on line 9 after the curly brace, and we're going to put another space, and kind of like the else if, where we were checking if there was a left key, we just want to do an else, so no other if. If it's not right and it's not left, then he must not be moving, so we're going to tell him to stand. So we'll say else, and then put another space, and we want another left and right curly brace. Then we can go in between those curly braces and do enter, enter, up, tab to go into the next line. And on this line, all we have to say is hero.play stand. And then after that, we just need some parentheses and a semicolon. And now if we click back into the game, he stops running, which is great. The only other thing that we need to do is now, if he's running to the left, before you run to the right, he's still just sliding. And this is because we tell him to run when he's going to the right, but we never tell him to run when he's going to the left. So we're fixed that by clicking on line 8, going all the way to the end of the line, hitting Enter Tab, and then we're just going to say hero.play run. And then we need some parentheses after that line and a semicolon. And then if we click back into the game, we can run to the right, we can run to the left, we can let go and stand, we can go to the left, the right, and it's working really good. Well, that's the end of the lesson. I hope you had fun and maybe learned a few things along the way. There really is a big need for more talented programmers all over the world, so I hope you'll consider filling that gap. I personally couldn't be more grateful for the opportunity I've had to explore some of the amazing things the tech world has to offer at such a young age. If you guys enjoyed the lesson and maybe want to continue and try to get to level 2, have your teacher reach out and we'll be more than happy to send over the rest of the Blobbert lesson plan. Here at CodeChangers, we offer a variety of curriculum through our summer camps and after-school programs, ranging from web development to making VR worlds. So if you're interested, feel free to go to CodeChangers.com to get more information. But that's all for now. I'm Dunn. This was Blobbert. I hope you had a good time, and I'll see ya.